Hello everyone, today I am going to do an FAQ about native plants. This will probably be a part 1 and part 2, so this is going to be part 1. Welcome to my YouTube channel, 90% Native. My name is Michelle, and I grow native plants, I garden for the wildlife, and I am teaching myself to grow vegetables and preserve them. The first question is, how are native plants and non-native plants different? So non-native plants do not originate in the area that you're in. They have been brought in by humans in some way. They don't have any natural symbiotic mutual relationships with any of the local insects and animals. Native plants, on the other hand, have existed in that area for thousands and thousands of years, have built relationships with the insects and the animals, and are contributing to maintaining a well-balanced ecosystem. Hey everyone, I'd like to ask you a favor. If this is content that appeals to you, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button, click the bell button so that you're notified when I upload a video. Then you can have quick access to all the native plant content that I am putting out there. The next question is, how can I find out if a native plant is native to my area? And that is a really good thing to keep in mind and to think about, because a lot of times when gardeners start getting into native plants, you'll think of a native plant as being native to all of the United States, okay? But that's not the case. There are plants that are native to specific areas of the United States, and even specific areas within specific states. So what I would suggest for you to do is to go to the Bon app website. That's the Biota of North America. You just go to Google, you type BONAP and then the Latin name of the plant that you're looking up, and that'll take you directly to a page that has the entire family of that plant, and then you'll just need to scroll down and find the specific species that you're looking for. Take a look at that map and see if it is native in your area. The other place that I would suggest you take a look at is the USDA website. You can pretty much do the same thing like I just said, but the USDA website has a page for each plant species, and then some of the plants actually have a really nice PDF to accompany them. So definitely check out the USDA website as well. The next question is, what are the benefits of using native plants in my landscape? Well, first and foremost, you are feeding all of the local insects. If y'all have heard of the insect apocalypse, probably something that you might be interested in looking up if you're on my channel anyway, but the native plants feed our local insects, give them habitat. They feed the birds, they feed, the little mammals, and the native plants are contributing to your local ecosystem, whereas non-native or non-native invasive plants are not providing that level of benefit and contribution to your local ecosystem. The next question is, how do I care for my native plants? Because native plants are naturally occurring in your local soil, in your local area, they're adapted to the weather and the soil. So they're a lot less maintenance than an ornamental or a non-native plant. So what I do as far as caring for my native plants is, when I first plant them in the ground, I really give them a good soak of water. And then, to be honest with you, a lot of times I just leave them to their own devices, except if there is a severe drought. Lots of times in the late summer here in Northern Virginia, we'll get a drought. So first year plants might get some supplemental watering from me. But if you are planting your plants in the right place, so in my videos I've talked about right plant, right place before. So if you're planting your plants in the right place, then they're probably already going to have access to the type of soil and water and sun that they want. So that's how you maintain your plants, really and truly, is putting the right plant in the right place. Okay, so aside from that, there is something that I do with really tall plants. Well, not really tall, actually a lot of plants. And these would be not the spring plants, but more of like my summer plants. But I do what I call the Chelsea chop. I've been doing this for years, and what you do is in Northern Virginia, between May 1st and May 15th, I will chop back my perennials by half. And what that does is keep them a little on the shorter side, and then you're gonna get smaller flowers but more flowers. And this is just an attempt to prevent flopping. They may still flop. Now, there are some plants that you can Chelsea chop twice. There are some plants you can Chelsea chop all the way to the ground. So if you are looking at plants to Chelsea chop twice, think about asters. Those are ones that might be able to sustain 2 Chelsea chops. And if we're talking Northern Virginia, that means I would do my first Chelsea chop the beginning of May and my second Chelsea chop no later than June 15th. Don't do this to all of your plants if you've never tried it before. This really is going to be something that you need to experiment in your own garden beds. The only other thing I do to my native plants is in the spring, I will cut everything back to the ground. Next question is, how do I go about creating a garden bed for native plants? I'll tell you my favorite way, and if you have followed me, you probably already know what I'm gonna say. Okay, so I like to get an old garden hose. You can also use a rope. And then I use that garden hose to kind of outline the garden bed. Then I cover the grass and I smother the grass with cardboard. And then I put like 6 inches of arborist wood chips over top. You can get free arborist wood chips from chipdrop.com. And then I just usually let that sit for a season. So typically if I am making new garden beds, I am doing that in the fall, and then I'm planting in late spring or early summer. Now, do not let that prohibit you from getting a native plant garden started now. You can just use like a traditional method where you remove the grass, maybe throw some leaf grow compost over top of it and start planting. If you wanted, you could actually, instead of getting rid of all that material, like if you're getting rid of the grass, you could kind of get the grass up, turn it over, and let the grass smother and decompose and let that goodness go back in the soil, and then the soil is up. So that might be a way that you can reduce weeds. I know with my cardboard method, it really does a great job of keeping down the weeds and giving me a really good head start on weed control. And then the other way is just start planting natives in your existing garden beds. Go ahead and get rid of your invasive plants and pop in natives instead. You don't need a specific garden bed for natives. You can put natives anywhere. The next question is how do I identify non-native and non-native invasive plants? So the first thing I would recommend you do is to get this book called Plant Invaders of the Mid-Atlantic. I absolutely love this book. I know there are 2 versions. There's one that was just released, and I don't think it's readily available, but the older one is just fine. That's the one I have. So that's going to identify, especially for the Mid-Atlantic, the common invasive plants, and it's going to tell you specifically how they recommend to get rid of those invasive plants. If you're not in the Mid-Atlantic, I would get the app called Seek, S-E-E-K. The Seek app does a really good job of identifying invasive plants. It's not always 100% accurate. It doesn't always, it's not always able to pull the plant, but I really like using Seek specifically. And if I'm not mistaken, it is synced up with iNaturalist. So that's another good app to have so that you can go out in your yard and identify what you have growing naturally and whether it is native or invasive. Next up is how to remove invasive plants. So this can depend based on what plant it is, and I would recommend probably going onto Google, and if you identify an invasive, looking that plant up and finding from some of the universities or extension offices their best ways to remove the plant. Now, I will tell you with things like Japanese stiltgrass, I will pull it after a very heavy rain to make sure that all the roots come out, because it will sprout from the roots if I'm not mistaken. For the Vinca vine, I try to do the same. For English ivy, I try to do the same. There are some plants that are best if you maybe weed whack them to the ground and then smother them with cardboard. So like cardboard and like 6 to 9 layers of wood chips, and then if they still sprout, then you might have to do some hand pulling. I will tell you that lily of the valley, which is a problem in my yard. I know some of you may love lily of the valley, but it is not a native plant and it's a little bit invasive for me. So I have chopped it all back to the ground, put 2 layers of cardboard, put 6 to 9 inches of wood chip over top of it, and that stuff came back the next year like nothing. It was almost like, thank you. So some plants require different methods to remove them. I would say that in some instances you may need to use like targeted herbicide if you can't get that plant, if you are having such a hard time getting that plant out of your yard. Sometimes it's better just to get that done, get it out, and then get the natives in, and then you're good to go. I will say though that I am not a fan of using chemicals, and if I do use an herbicide to get rid of something, it's an invasive plant, and it's an invasive plant that I have not been able to get rid of with any of the other techniques that I have used in the past. Oh, when I say that you can, use your herbicide in a targeted way, you can also use like a Roundup, like on a paintbrush, like get a little jar and put some on a paintbrush and then paint it on to the invasive plant. And so you're really targeting in there, minimizing the use of the Roundup and also getting rid of your invasive plant. Okay, so next question. What are the best native plants for the wildlife? So number one, you probably already know I'm going to say this, but milkweed, of course, to save the monarchs. Now, you need to make sure you look up milkweed that is native to your area. There are a lot of different types of milkweeds. There are milkweeds that can be invasive. So first up, my favorite milkweed for the Mid-Atlantic area is rose milkweed or swamp milkweed, and that likes full sun and a little bit of a moist environment. And then my other favorite milkweed for the Mid-Atlantic area is butterfly weed, and that's the orange milkweed, and it grows a little bit shorter. Just know though, if you're going to get butterfly weed, you really need to make sure that you are looking up the specific botanical names, and that botanical that botanical or Latin name is on the plant label, because there is something called tropical milkweed that is not native to the Mid-Atlantic. I don't even think it's native. I'm not sure if it's even native to the US, except for maybe like very, very, very southern Florida. People are saying that where tropical milkweed has been planted up in the northern areas, it's keeping the monarchs from completing their migration. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I'm not going to plant it because I don't want to take the chance. After the milkweed, then I would say planting a mountain mint, like especially a clustered mountain mint. I absolutely love mountain mints, so I would suggest clustered mountain mints. You really will get an unbelievable amount of pollinators if you plant clustered mountain mint. I'll put the Latin name up on the screen. And then for the birds, I would say plant purple coneflower and rudbeckia. They love the seed heads, so those two are really good for the birds. Of course, any of the bushes and things like that with the berries on them are really good for the birds too, but I'm trying to focus here on native perennials. Okay, so then for the hummingbirds, I would try coral honeysuckle, and then I would also try cardinal flower. Make sure you look up the requirements and plant them in the right place. Like for instance, cardinal flower likes to be very moist. So anyway, those will definitely bring the hummingbirds to your yard. And finally, I've mentioned this one in my past couple videos, but partridge pea will bring the bumblebees. The bumblebees adore partridge pea, and that's actually an annual, and it'll self-seed everywhere. And finally, to keep those pollinators in your yard late in the season, and to make sure that they have food through the fall, make sure you have goldenrods and asters. So some people ask, are native plants low maintenance? And yeah, they are low maintenance in the fact that they are adapted to the local weather and the climate and the soil and yeah, all that good stuff. That's what makes them low maintenance. But you need to put your natives in the right place. So right plant, right place, in order for it to be low maintenance. So if you put a very full sun plant, like that plant label says full sun, and it does not even think about saying part sun. If you put that plant in a part sun area, it's gonna flop. You're gonna have to stake it. It's gonna be annoying. So it's important that you are planting the plants in the right place, in addition to them being native, to really get as much low maintenance from those plants as you can. How you design your native plant bed can also help with keeping it low maintenance. Now, if you just go and throw a bunch of native plants into a garden bed willy-nilly, not thinking about right plant, right place, not thinking about the height needs that you want for that bed, you know, all those kinds of things, it will probably become wild, and then that will become high maintenance if you're not just going to let it be wild. So if you are designing beds more on the formal side, I would suggest using native bushes to give you strong bones and a foundation. I would suggest massing in plants in areas. Don't use like onesie twosies, use like 7 and 9 of a specific plant, and that plant takes up a specific area. I would also suggest lining your beds with maybe a carex or a sedge or a native grass, a short native grass, or you can use something like Barren strawberry or Virginia strawberry or green and gold to kind of line the beds before the design comes up to the higher, the taller plants. So that's what I try to do to keep my native plant beds low maintenance. And finally, what is a native plant and why are they important? I did an entire video on just those 2 questions, so I will put a card up for that video. But native plants are plants that have existed in a specific location for thousands of years before European settlement, and they are plants that have developed relationships with the local insects and animals over that time. And then why they are important is specifically those relationships. Those relationships are huge in keeping our insect populations up and to support our birds, to support our butterflies and our bees. Just native plants are important because that is the foundation, that's the basis of your local ecosystem, and that's what you want to support, so that you are providing a fantastic habitat for all of your local wildlife. Okay, so if you have made it this far with me, I would love it if you would give this video a like. I will put a link up to the video I did on what are native plants and why they're important, so you can have quick access to that again here at the end of this video. And that's it for today. So happy gardening, everyone, and I will catch you again next time.